Hi and welcome to the Flatback 4 podcast with me, Andy McGuire, Scott Eaglen. Joining us this week is one of my favourite people, our favourite people on Twitter. Been following him for years, Mr. Luke Royle, aka George Weah's cousin. Thanks for coming on, mate.
No problem, thanks for having me on.
Oh, really good, man, really good. Scott, do you want to say anything about the man, the myth, the legend that we've got in front of us now?
I'm more nervous now than when we interviewed Ian Dowie and Brian Dean. Honestly, I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty.
Yeah, no, you are one of our favourite. We've always spoke about tweets. We've had a couple of interactions over the years and stuff. Twitter's a funny, especially at the minute. Twitter's a funny place, and I mean, you never know what you're going to get. You never know who's going to get there. I think you've got 40,000 followers on there now.
Yeah, not far off.
With Twitter, with you and football, what is the backlash that you kind of get from Twitter when you tweet an opinion? I mean, I've had a couple of tweets gone viral, but for someone who's got followers that, when they have Twitter and they make a football comment or maybe a funny thing, how people take it. Have you had some backlash, and what kind of reaction do you get sometimes?
It's a bit like being a referee, where it doesn't matter what game you're in charge of, you are always biased against that team. So if I say something about, especially one of the bigger clubs like United or Liverpool or Arsenal, we'll get it off Arsenal fans quite a lot. It's like, oh, you're so biased against Arsenal, or you never have anything positive to say against United. And I think I could go through my tweets and show you something where I've slagged off Spurs, I've slagged off Chelsea.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. Yeah. But to be fair, I don't tend to get too much stick, so I've probably been quite lucky in that respect. But I get the odd bit here and there.
You should do, mate, because you're absolutely hilarious. And your tweets are, I think for someone who's like me and Scott, we're like you. We criticise Leeds. We're Leeds fans, but we criticise Leeds. We criticise Man United, Liverpool, Tottenham. But on the Twitter front, then, how did it kind of evolve for you, Twitter? Like how? Because I'm guessing, obviously, maybe someone saw your tweets and it was funny. Did you have a few tweets that went viral in the early days? Is that how it started?
Yeah, I mean, I think, speaking of Leeds, to be fair, the one that probably did it was when I started doing the fake quotes, and I did one when Steve Evans joined Leeds, and that was kind of the first one that really sort of blew up. And then I couldn't tell you what the next sort of 2 or 3 were, but I kept doing it, and it kept working, and that was what kind
of.
They
were funny, man. They were funny. I mean, that's a while ago now.
Yeah, didn't you do one about like Paul Scholes? You did one about Paul Scholes or something, didn't you?
Yeah, I did Paul. I can't remember what that actually was, but I did Paul Scholes. I did one about Gary Neville, the Celtic one. Did various ones, and I probably did them all over the course of about a year, to be honest. And then I sort of stopped doing it probably about 3 years ago now, because it was just getting to the point where I thought it's either going to land me in hot water or somebody who's in one of the quotes themselves.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, I suppose, with something like that, because, like I say, Twitter's such a mad world, and people take stuff so literally, don't they? It's unbelievable. But the Twitter thing then, did that lead then to you, getting bigger and going for work? Was it for work then that you moved down south from Wigan?
Yeah, so I got like a couple of sort of job offers through that, which was good. So I've worked in social media now for about 4 years, but I would sort of, it's now at the point where I've got experience in the industry rather than, I'm just working in the industry because of my Twitter account. I've been really lucky that, there've been a lot of people that had to, I assume, go through various courses, go through university to get the career in social media that they want, whereas I kind of was lucky that I was fast-tracked a little bit. So I moved down to London about 3 years ago now for what would have then been my second job in social media, and I've basically been doing it sort of freelance now since January, which obviously isn't the ideal time to be freelancing in the current climate, but
it's true. I know. Tell me about it.
Really.
Tell me about it.
One of your most favourite tweets, wasn't it, the Pogba one?
God, I remember. I reference this tweet so much, mate, because it's the one where you said Pogba needs to get into positions where he's more effective, like Sassuolo or Pascal. I remember reading that one night, and I sent it to Scott, and I was just crying because I think he's one of the most overhyped. Honestly, I think he's one of the most overrated players I think we've ever had in the Premier League. And you tweeted that years ago. That was like, I think when he first came back in that first season. And you couldn't have hit it more off the head. I mean, I still think I think we tweeted about it a few weeks ago. We retweeted the tweet because it's so funny. It's so true. I mean, obviously Pogba with his big social media. Do you think Pogba is more of the brand rather than the footballer? Because I can't really get my head around Pogba as a player. I think he can be good on his day. I think he's got that. He has got the ability. He's a World Cup winner. I'm not saying that he's not good, but is he as elite as people think? I don't think he is, personally. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I really like him. I think ability-wise, like you say, he's undoubtedly world-class. I think it might have been Jamie Carragher the other night who said there's nothing he can't do. But I do think since he's been at United, they've not found a position for him. One week he's sort of playing in front of the back four, the next week he's playing as a 10, then he's playing a bit on the left, and I don't think that's helped. But
what is his position? Where would you play him?
For me, if I was, I'd play him a bit like Gary Neville said the other night. I'd have a midfield free, and I'd play him as I'd have someone. I think United suffer from not having a real holding midfield. I think they've probably got Matic, who's the most suitable player. But yeah, he's getting on a bit. And then sometimes I play Fred there, sometimes I play McTominay there. But I wouldn't have him anywhere near the back four. I'd have him not as a 10, but midfield free, holding player, and then 2 in front of him. But I just think it's at the point where it's just not going to work for him at United. I think they've got Fernandez now, obviously, who's been a success, and I think there's a player in him, obviously, but I just don't think it's the right fit, and I think it's been evident for a while now.
Fernandez has seemed to have done more in 6 to 8 months. I mean, he didn't play his first game until February 1st, Fernandez, and he got Player of the Season. But he seems to have done more and created more in games than Pogba's done in the last 3-4 years since he's been back at United. I just don't know where he's going to go, Pogba. I mean, he'll probably go to Real Madrid, probably maybe because of the brand and stuff, because they like that Galacticos thing, don't they?
I think. But I look at games like he played in the World Cup when they won it, and back when he was at Juve, I didn't see loads of him at Juve, but I saw bits and pieces, and he just seemed to fit there, and he just doesn't really seem to fit at United, and I couldn't really put my finger on what it was. I don't think United's sort of situation over the last 3 or 4 years, every year they seem to be in a transition. I don't really think that's helped, but at the same time, you'd expect somebody who costs what he costs and who has his reputation to be able to, be one of the players that takes it on for him, and it's just not happened for whatever reason.
The thing is with Pogba as well is, he's probably a victim of his own versatility as well. What's he now? What is he, Andy? You're the age specialist. What is he now? 26,
27, just earned it.
You think for a player that age now, you'd have thought he'd have got his sort of preferred position, and maybe at Juventus he was just one of them players where the team revolved around him. He was the sort of main man there, wasn't he? Whereas at Man United, he's got players around him who are probably better than him.
Luke made a good point though. At Juventus, when you think about it, he had Pirlo around him. He had players that knew their roles and then could leave Pogba to go and do what Pogba can do when we know that when he's on it. I think what you said there, Luke, was the fact that he hasn't really. He looks around. Sometimes he has Matic behind him, then he has McTominay, maybe there's no real balance. But actually, the other night when he came on at PSG, I thought he was good actually when he came on, and. But the other night as well, I actually thought McTominay and Fred actually had good games as well. So it's quite hard, really, because in big games, Solskjaer turns into Fergie. He seems to he gets it right. So I don't know. It's hard for Ollie, really, because he must be so frustrated knowing you've got a player in Pogba that can play, and then all of a sudden he goes missing for games and he's not consistent. But I mean, we're gonna come back to the Premier League. I just want to touch on your team, Wigan. That's been a bit of a whirlwind few months for you guys. It's the height of the FA Cup, the players that you had some great players, and I mean, how do you explain what's going on at Wigan?
I think sort of what was going on up until 3 or 4 months ago was it was a drop from, like you said, the heights of winning the FA Cup and playing in the Premier League for 10 years. But I think we always knew that was coming. We knew we weren't going to be an established Premier League club, for good. We were probably never going to become, like a Southampton type club. That was just never going to happen. Yeah. So
I feel Burnley are doing the same thing now. As what you guys did. You just feel that you're waiting for them to go.
Yeah, I think. I mean, again, Burnley have obviously had a couple of good years where they got into Europe and stuff. But I think if you spoke to most of their fans, they'd probably admit they're never going to be that top 6 club. And if you're not top 6, top 8 club, then you are always essentially just waiting for that year you go down. I think we also knew though that we probably weren't. We got to the playoffs obviously the next year when we went down, but I think we knew eventually, we were going to become a bit of a yo-yo club with Championship and League One. So we had a few years of that. Obviously, we went down a couple of times, won League One a couple of times, and last year, especially after lockdown, we were. I think there was only Brentford who got more points than us. Sort of in the last, and that was, to be fair, that started in January really. So that was like the last 20 games where we went from being bottom to without the points deduction, finishing 13th. And it wasn't just that we were in good form. We were a good side. We had good players at that level. We had like Kiefer Moore up front, Jamal Lowe. So they're now at sort of clubs who'll be pushing for promotion, and quite a few others. And Paul Cook, to be fair, he had his critics at Wigan, but he turned it round and he built a side and he built a squad that was this year would have been capable for challenging for the playoffs, especially with a couple of additions. So to see that kind of all go overnight to the point where we've now got probably 8 or 9 senior pros who are a mixture of 4 or 5 who were left from last year who were never really getting in the side, and then a few others we've picked up on frees, and the rest of the squad's just built up of kids. So it's going to be a difficult year, but keeping our fingers crossed. They're sort of going through a takeover process at the minute.
I'm going to ask, what is that then now? What is going on with that?
So it's a Spanish consortium who've basically they're now at the point where the EFL are doing their tests and whatnot, which, to be fair, we're kind of, it's frustrating, but we'd rather they got it right this time, because last time they obviously got it wrong with who they let buy the club. So people who are going through the process, they owned Albacete in Spain for a while, and they took them from, I think, the 3rd division to La Liga. But it sounds like they're very much a consortium of people who like to buy businesses, not just in football, struggling businesses, turn them around and then sell them on. So I don't think they're in it for the long term necessarily, but as long as they leave us in a better position than they pick us up in, then that's fine by me.
I can just imagine them starting in Spain thinking, right, which English club should we buy? And
apparently they wanted to buy an English club for 4 or 5 years, and they specifically wanted to buy one in League One because they think that's where they can make that turnaround
of progression.
Well, they did that, didn't they? Sheffield with the guy in the Middle East. He wanted to buy a League One club, didn't he? And I suppose maybe there's a little bit of sense in it, But
it's been realistic,
maybe
isn't it? It's been realistic, isn't it? It's, maybe not going too low, but Wigan had a bit of a mass exodus, didn't they, with players over at summer? I think we got one of your players, didn't we? Was it Joe Gelhardt? Was it who we took off?
Yeah. So he's quality, Joe Gelhardt. But that was the disappointing thing, was we lost basically anyone who was. I think we've probably got 2 or 3 players you could argue would get in the starting 11 at times last year. None of them were guaranteed stars, but players like Joe Garner, for example, who was basically Kiefer Moore's backup, so he's still here. The only senior players left are players that, with all due respect to them, nobody else wanted to buy. The clubs in League One couldn't necessarily afford to take on their wages. Clubs in the Championship just wouldn't really want them. So we've got, we lost about 15 players, but we lost players like Joe Gelhardt as well, who were, the future of the club. Our academy's done really well in recent years. We knocked Liverpool and Spurs out of the FA Youth Cup last year. So it was a shame to see players like that go and see them go for peanut. I think you got him for about $1 million, and he's probably worth in today's market anywhere between 5 and 10. You can argue.
I've heard good things about him as well. Has that mass exodus sort of decreased your expectations, or Wigan fans' expectations of this season? And were you a bit shocked? Were you a bit shocked when, is it John Sheridan who's manager now?
Yeah, John Sheridan, isn't it? Yeah.
That were a bit of a shock to me, him coming in.
I think most of us kind of accept that the year is not going to be, we're not going to be up there pushing for the playoffs. It was never going to be that way because, like I said, the squad's just full of kids now. And the senior players that are there that we've signed this summer on frees, the players that, again, nobody else really wanted. So we signed, for example, Will Keane, who was at United as a kid, and he's bounced around a few clubs, but I think he's had 2 cruciate ligament injuries. He's the sort of player that clubs aren't really going to touch because you can't keep him fit for long, and we've got sort of 3 or 4 like him. We've got questionable injury records. So, as we speak at the moment, we've got about 4 players injured, which means you've then got the kids who are not only filling the bench up, but they're starting the games. And I think we've used 8 players at centre back this year. There's just no sort of continuity between picking teams, and so John Sheridan, I think personally, I'm of the opinion the minute this takeover goes through, he's a dead man walking basically, because they're going to want to bring in their own guy. But I think for a squad that's sort of just thrown together, we don't need a tactical genius at the minute. We just need someone who's going to get 11 players on the pitch every week and give us a fighting chance. And I don't think he's a bad pick for that, to be honest.
Yeah. Just thinking about that, actually, you've always had that little Spanish link, haven't you, actually, with like Roberto Martinez and Jordi Gomez. What a goal the other night, by the way, Jordi Gomez.
Oh my God, he beat it straight after Kamaru, wasn't he? He beat the record.
Yeah. I didn't think the ball was moving when he hit it, but we'll let him have that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny hearing you speak, Luke. It's like when we were in League One with Leeds, wasn't it? Like, you hear stuff, don't you, there, Scott? Now you think, yeah, we've been there.
Yeah. Mate, do you know what stresses me?
It's awful.
What stresses me out about Twitter football fans, mate, and I think you agree with this, Luke, is that Wigan get criticised a lot. Not at the moment, obviously, because there's no fans, but have been, should we say, a tin pot club, how they say it, and they never fill the stadium or anything. Well,
it's rugby league time.
Yeah, well, Wigan never brag about being a big club. It's not as if it's Newcastle United. It really stresses me out.
These people, it goes one or two ways. So when we were sort of making our way up the leagues, if we got a big attendance for a cup game or something like that, it was like, oh, it's just, full of glory hunters and full of people who are just turning up to watch a big team. And then when we're in the Premier League and we're still only getting sort of 15, 16,000 people, people then start slagging off, and it's like, well, do you want the stadium to be full of people like on day trip and the club went from League 2 in 1997 to the Premier League in 2005. Like, we were getting 2,000 fans, and we're then getting 16, 17 average. Like, you can't just create a fan base of 25,000 people in 8 years. It just doesn't work.
It's true that
just went too quick.
I actually quite like that as well. Sometimes when listen, if you're big Wigan Warrior fans and whatnot, but Wigan are doing well in the football, and if there's a big cup game and it's a semi-final, you might not be the biggest football fan. You'd be like, but you know what, with Wigan, let's go get behind it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. We always criticise people for not jumping on the bandwagon, but why can't you just go support your team? I'm not, maybe a biggest, say if you're not a big cricket fan, but, if Yorkshire are about to win it and we can go for a session, we think, you know what, we can go support lads, have a good beer, have a laugh. What's wrong with that? And I think we lose that sometimes, and I don't understand why people are so critical on that front. But, it's interesting with Wigan, because I said to Scott the other day, it just feels like we're watching what we went through, and it's awful. It's such a bad feeling, and I know Wigan, they're not as big as Leeds. I can say that because they're not as big as Leeds. However, you don't want to see a team. I don't like that demand. Look at Bolton. I mean, I live close to Bolton, and my girlfriend's family, they're quite a lot of Bolton fans. And you mentioned a great point there, Luke. When you play the kids, or you're playing, players that no one's really got, they're getting battered. They're getting battered 6-1, 6, because they're not ready for it, and going out on loan, and it's so hard to attract them players. But I mean, you got Joe Gardner. I mean, Scott's face lights up every time you say that name, because he loves that the goal, that the greatest ever.
Preston against, I think it was Rotherham. Oh my God,
it was unbelievable.
It was just the greatest goal ever.
It was good, but it is important to keep them players, because he has got that experience. How old is he now? He must be.
Must be 31, 32.
Yeah, 31, 32. But you've got to have that kind of level of experience in your team if you're going to get back. We dotted around, didn't we? And we had Michael Browns of the world that were 35, 36, and we're going, he's a must starter. And then it was like, he's not a starter. It's awful, because I didn't want to criticise him. I've actually met him. He's a nice guy, but at the time it was like, and now we're having, we've got Rafinha playing. You think, God, 5-6 years ago we wouldn't have even. It's just so quick. The football world can be so quick. Just touching on like the Wigan aspect, and in general EFL with money, the whole project, big picture, and the money that's been splashed around. I would have been happy. We've said on this podcast that we thought that if the games were maybe £5 or £6 every time there was a payment for a pay-per-view, it could have gone to the EFL clubs. Did you have a system what you thought might have worked to help the clubs down there? Because it's not an endless money pit. Even for Premier League clubs, there's only really your elites, your Man City, Liverpool, Manchester United, that can kind of cope without these fans for a while. So what is the answer? Do you have anything that you would think?
be honest, I didn't really look massively in depth at the project big picture, but it's a tough one because, like you said, there aren't many clubs in the Premier League that can do it for long. I'm of the opinion that the money, like you say, it should have come from another source rather than just the clubs themselves. But what gets me is when you see clubs saying, "Oh, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be trying to bail out these clubs. It's not up to us. We haven't got the money." And then they go and spend £10 million on a player, and it's like, I understand it's their money, and they earn that money, and they're entitled to do what they want with it. But I think there is like Sean Dyche made some comments about how he didn't think it was right, and it wouldn't happen in any other business where the top businesses would bail out the lower businesses. But it's like the Football League is not just. It's not just there. It is, you look at, I think the last England squad, you had like Calvert-Lewin in it. You had Grealish, who was on loan at Notts County. You had 7 or 8 players.
Leighton Orient and all that lot.
Yeah. 7 or 8 players. If it wasn't for the Football League, wouldn't be anywhere near the level they are at the moment. And it is important, and clubs do need to, and it's what makes English football unique as well. No other country's got a pyramid like we have. And you'd like to think, I think, without generalising, there's so much sort of foreign ownership now in the Premier League, and quite rightly, they're obviously not, they don't see the benefits as maybe other people do of the Football League, but it would be sad if they let anything happen to it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and like you said, that was a great point about the players going on loan. It makes people better players, dropping down to Championship League One, getting roughed up, coming back to the Premier League. We've seen it time and time again, with players going down. And look at Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy is one of them prime examples of starting lower and thinking, get given that opportunity. And look at him now. I mean, he's we play him on Monday. I'm a little bit frightened about Vardy, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, it's the whole money thing in the game is going crazy, and it's not just these smaller clubs we're worried about. We are worried about Premier League clubs and whatnot. I don't know what the answer is going to be. I don't understand how we can have a cinema showing the football, but we can't go to an open stadium. It's baffling. It's absolutely. I just can't even get my head around it whatsoever. But it's going to be interesting over the Christmas period, because I think we're going to be in lockdown maybe from next week. I don't see this shifting until January, February, and the March, April, May. We're nearly at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there's anything like. Obviously, full stadiums is off the cards this year. But I'm amazed if it's anything like. I mean, like I say, it's weird when I think it was Hull were doing a thing where there were fans in their hospitality suite watching the game. And it's like. I understand it's lesser numbers, but
close
when you're outside, you get 3-4 seats between people. It
can be manageable. You can manage a safe stadium. I mean, look, what's Wigan? Is it 25,000? The attendance. Mate, even if you get a 10% attendance of 2,500, surely that's better than nothing. And you can easily safe distance people. You can manage people coming in. I'm sure. Look
how many entrances there is to a stadium. And you could get given allocated. For me, I mean, football gets a lot of flack, but it actually is one of the times where I go, well, football's right here. It's probably one of the most safest environments. It's not just one entrance into a store. It's not one, entrance. You've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 entrances to a stadium. It's ridiculous.
I think as long as your stadium, you get some stadiums where they're built right out in the sticks, like next to a motorway, and therefore a lot of people will, drive somewhere and get a train or a tram or a bus. But most stadiums, like Wigan Stadium, pretty much everyone in Wigan could quite easily walk to the stadium, especially from the town centre. And I really don't understand then why, like you say, you can't have 10-15% attendance or whatever and nicely spaced out. It's a shame, really.
Yeah, I think Man U were trying to push for a test event out the 20,000, 23,000. I mean, I think it would work.
They had a test event just before the season started, didn't they? Brighton against Chelsea. What was that a test event for? Because it was a success, but it hasn't led to anywhere. So I don't see the point in it. And like you say, it contradicts all the rules at the minute out and about. There's been a couple of games on the sort of Sunday League where they've had, like you say, the closed curtains and all in the bar congregated having a pint, but they couldn't go around the pitch.
It's bizarre.
Moving on to the actual Premier League, because obviously you're like us, you're a general football league fan as well. It's been crazy this year. We've got Calvert-Lewin looking like Messi. We've got, Liverpool with no defenders, and it's such a funny league. We only had his first 0-0, was it last week?
Yeah.
Do you see a random Premier League season? And I think, I don't know about you, but the fans not being there, less pressure. So you maybe doing passes that are a little bit more dangerous. You're taking chances.
Yeah.
Could we see a Spurs win it? Everton Champions League? What do you think?
I was thinking probably before the West Ham game that Spurs for me were the one club out of that big six who looked a bit fresh, because obviously Mourinho came in, I don't even know when it was now.
November last year, exactly this time last year he came.
Yeah, halfway through last season, and at that point he's not got his squad. He's then had a couple of transfer windows. He's brought in that time 5 or 6 players in, and I thought Spurs looked like the side that looked fresh, and they kind of had a period at the end of last season where they weren't playing for anything, other than the Europa League, of course, but it was kind of a fresh start for Spurs this year, where I felt like Liverpool, City, United, it was almost just like carrying on from last season. So I thought Spurs had an advantage where, especially not having Champions League football, where they could really have a go, have a good squad now. But then,
and they do have a good squad. Jesus,
they do, especially going forward. They've got sort of 2 players for every position. So I did think Spurs, and I'm a big believer. Like, people were talking, obviously, when football restarted in June or whenever it was, that Liverpool's title would be an asterisk year. But for me, like, this is the asterisk year. Like, we're probably going to have no fans all season. It's massively condensed. No FA Cup replays. You've got so many things that are different to a normal year. And I just think injuries are going to play a part. Players are going to get tired. I mean, we've got another international break in 2 weeks when we had 3 games for everybody a couple of weeks ago. It's just, there's going to be so much going on that players haven't had before. I think whatever happens at the end of the season, people will look back on it in years to come and say, but I mean, that was the year when. So I couldn't call anything this year. I think it's going to be really odd. I
don't think anyone can call it. I want to pose you a question though that I wanted to ask Scott as well. Everyone talks about Kane and whatnot, which of course I love Kane, absolutely phenomenal player. But Son is so good, and I want to I was speaking to a Liverpool fan. I don't want to pigeonhole them, but we know what Liverpool fans can be like. And I said I would take Son over Firmino any day of the week. Any day of the week. I think he offers every. And I just did it. I've got a couple of Liverpool fans that I know and stuff, and they melt down. And I was like, the guy can do everything. He runs into channels, he battles. He's actually got a bit of a mean streak about him, Son, as well, which people don't. Maybe because he's always smiling, but he has actually got a little bit of grit about him. He might not set up the goals or bring people into play. But I wanted to ask you, would Son make Liverpool stronger than keeping Firmino rather than the Kane scenario? Because I think Son's brilliant.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think with Firmino, he's one of those players that he's perfect for Liverpool's system. Whether or not, if you put Firmino in Spurs' side, I think he'd look not poor,
average.
But he wouldn't stand out at all.
I agree.
It's a tough one because I do like Son, and I think with Son he can play. He can play across the front three. He doesn't necessarily need to be on the left. It's a tough one really because they are such different players, and I think they're both, especially Firmino, they're sort of system players, aren't they? Where they really suit the system that they're playing in.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Scott? Would you take Son over Firmino?
I mean, listen, Son.
They're different.
Yeah, they're totally different players. I think, like Luke said, Firmino sort of fits the way that Liverpool play. Don't get me wrong, Son would probably get into their squad, but it's one of those, isn't it, where it's a knee-jerk reaction. I think with football fans these days. I think as soon as a player hits any sort of form, they start branding that world class. Or he's unbelievable. He's probably one of the best players in the world. Listen, let's see if he can do it over a longer period, and then maybe he's in that sort of world class bracket, but. He probably will get in Liverpool squad, maybe not in the first 11, because let's not make no doubt about it. That front three is a very good front three because they work together as well, not just individually. They are a good front.
No,
three.
I agree, and that's what Luke made a good point there. If you pick Firmino up and plonked him in Tottenham, would he do that same job? Well, probably not, because they've got 2 wide men, Bale, Moura. They're probably similar, but they're not to that level. But the argument with Son is like when Kane's been injured, he's always stepped up. Son, he scored, I think, 7 goals when Kane was out with that ankle injury. He really did step up. So sometimes I'm just a little bit like Kane, which I agree is world class.
Yeah.
But Son, I think, is probably the most underrated striker in Europe. I do think that for what he gets through, and I think Son would fit into any other team. Whereas we've said Firmino, I don't think would fit into any other team.
Yeah, possibly. I just want a quick change subject. I'm just hesitant. We've got a few minutes left. I wanted to get Luke's opinion on this because I like to hear everybody's opinion on this, particularly fans of clubs in lower leagues. What's your opinion on VAR, Luke? Do you think it's been a success so far? Do you think it's been managed properly in the Premier League? Do you think it's... I don't know. What's your opinion on it?
It's a tough one because I see the benefits of it. You know, I think there've been... I can't think of any that come to mind, but there have been examples of goals in the last sort of year where you might have got away with it, you know, whether it was a handball, whatever it might have been in years gone by. But it's, for me, it's more the rules. It's like the Mane goal at not Mane, Henderson's goal at Goodison Park.
Yeah.
Like, you're offside, but if you're having to draw lines and look at it for 2 minutes, like the game shouldn't be.
I agree.
I think, you know, we used to have the daylight rule or whatever it was. It shouldn't be done to that sort of, you know, absolute millimetre. I get, you know, offside is offside, but he's not gained an advantage by being a millimetre offside and stuff like that. For me, it just doesn't need to be there. And there seems to be too many incidents that go into VAR, and it's like the stuff now with the linesmen where it's, you know, they don't put the flag up because, well, what's the point in linesmen anymore? I don't understand.
Exactly. Why
if the linesman isn't there, the goal goes ahead, you then check it offside on. What's the point in the linesman? I don't understand.
And as well with that,
they're kind of there just to be a fancy thing.
Yeah, as well with that, you know, it's one of them. If he is actually offside and they're playing on, what if that player then gets injured? So we've played on for absolutely no reason, and then the player gets injured.
Actually, it's not going to be long before a player goes, you know, halfway through the pitch, pulls his hamstring out for 8 weeks, and he was offside by a mile anyway.
Yeah, just because they didn't put the flag on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you just said there, Luke, with the daylight rule. I think if an arm is offside, you're not gaining any advantage. The only way you're gaining advantage is if that foot. Man, I'm doing the actions. None of you can see me, so it's ridiculous. But you know, when you're putting your foot in front of one person, say if that's your foot, that's an offside. You know, that's not offside. An arm's it's ridiculous. I don't know why we're not using common sense. In every shape of the world now, I think people have lost common sense.
Yeah.
Whether it's football, politics, opinions, people are losing the shit, to speak, over so little things, you know.
But mate, VAR, and I hate VAR. I was against it from minute one, but it is going by the rules. It's following the rules.
Oh, it's getting it bang on.
And it's doing it properly. It's getting every decision pretty much bang on, and that's what 9% of football fans wanted. But listen, I mean, for me, I'll let you talk more about it, Luke, but for me, it's the referee who should manage the game. It should ultimately be their decision. Why go to somebody else who may have 3 different opinions in a room that's probably
subjective, in it? It's subjective.
Listen,
we always said
90% of decisions, probably 95% of decisions in football are all subjective. Me, you, and Luke could all have different opinions on different challenges or different offsides. There's only one thing that's absolutely certain in football, and that's when the ball crosses the line, and we've got something for that. So why do we then need VAR that ultimately slows the game down, takes away all the passion, and it does ruin football, man. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that obviously being a Football League fan, we don't have that. Again, when you can actually go to games, there's no. I think we played Leicester actually away last year in the FA Cup, and they had VAR for that game, and we had a goal that was disallowed for it, and it was one of them where you don't think that once the ball's at the net and the flag's not gone up, you don't think it's going to come back 2 minutes later. And I'm not saying that it's unfair, because if you are miles offside and VAR flags it up where the lines and wouldn't, then great, that's what it's there for. But it's just that you're almost sort of second guessing whether or not you should celebrate a goal. And
well, that's it. You've just hit my point there. It's the ecstasy of scoring, isn't it? You score now, and people are immediately going, "Can I celebrate?" And that's not the fun. You don't want that. And then we had the farce of was it the Man United Brighton game when they were walking off the pitch, game finished. Oh, we're back on, guys. You know what I mean? That was Fergie time extended. That Jesus, I've never seen out like that before in my life. But
could you imagine though, like Ben Watson who scored in the FA Cup final against City?
Yeah.
You know, you celebrate for 30 seconds, and then they go, oh, actually, there were a little bit of a push in the box. Let's wait a few minutes, and then it just totally takes away everything. You know, that immediate passion that is so good about football. It's so different to every other sport.
Yeah, I mean, again, go back to the Henderson one. You can imagine if that's a full stadium, you've got 3,000-4,000 Liverpool fans there, 93rd minute of a derby, and you win it, and then must have been 2 or 3 minutes before that got ruled out, and to see it ruled out for what it was ruled out for, you'd be absolutely sick.
You're going to see more
injuries. Pickford was the most happiest person I think in the world when that.
You're going to see more injuries, though, aren't you? Because of that, because of these stoppages, because of reviewing so many things. You know, football is a game that's played at a high intensity, innit? And you stop for 2 minutes, and you cramp up maybe, and then you're back into it, and then you stop again. Yeah. There's going to be more injuries just because of it.
Yeah.
So I want to, just before we finish, I want your prediction, Luke. Who do you think is going to win the Premier League? Who have you gone for?
Do you know what? I've not actually thought about this. It is a tough one because I look at Liverpool and I think Van Dijk out's a big miss. I look at City though and I think they've still got. I'd probably go with City, which is a boring answer. I just think.
No, I do. I think City.
I think squad-wise, especially at the back now that they brought Diaz in and Ake in, I think they'll probably sort the defence out a little bit, and then I'd go with City. Yeah.
Another one. And do you think any surprises for Champions League? Do you think anyone might sneak in? Leeds, maybe?
Stop it.
I mean, again, at the start of the season, I did think we're going to see something weird this year. I do think somebody will break into that top 6. I don't know who it'll be, and I don't know who'll drop out.
Maybe Man U might break in again. No, they're in it.
But I do think I was saying the other day, nobody's going to get, even for me. I can't see anyone even getting 90 points this year. There's not going to be any 100.
No.
There's not going to be anybody getting, miles ahead of anybody, I don't think. So I think it's going to be tight, and I think in that way it will be interesting that especially the top 4 and top 6 I think will go right to the wire. And I think there's probably about 8 teams in there who you could reasonably argue. Something like Wolves at the minute you could argue could push for it. So
if Chelsea have not clicked yet, but they've got good signings. I mean, I don't know. So when we invite you back on, and Man City have won it by 95 points, Pogba's PFA Player of the Year.
We're going to promote it with a depleted squad.
Yeah, with no ownership, they're playing at local park.
Take that.
It's funny, but that is why we do love football, and that is why it is, it's a great sport. And even though this time at the minute is rubbish, it has been enjoyable. The football we've been texting each other through games and stuff, and the Villa Liverpool game, unbelievable. And I think we're going to see more of that. But Luke, thanks for coming on, mate. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Please follow this guy. He's so funny. You're a great guy, very knowledgeable as well, and you get transfers wrong as much as me and Scott. So you're always a friend of our show. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Cheers,
and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Bye, mate.
Bye.